Small Town Faces is a short docu-series created by Southwestern Montana News. Everybody has a story to tell, and many wish they would have that story on film. On Small Town Faces, we'll start with the stories from the residents of Dillon, and we will eventually work our way to other neighboring towns. We hope you enjoy this series, and be sure to thank our sponsors as they help make this possible. If you'd like to become a sponsor, or if you have a unique story you could tell, email southwesternmtnews@gmail.com. We hope you enjoy the series. On today's episode of Small Town Faces, we sat down with some local veterans who talked about their experience while serving our country. The veterans were at J.C. Park enjoying a Beaverhead County Chamber of Commerce and Agriculture event, Brats for the Brave.
Ralph McCosker, but they call me Sandy here. I'm Sandy McCosker. I was drafted into the Army back in '66. And out of the whole company, 5 of us got chosen to go to what was even named then, but it was Tigerland. Jungle warfare and guerrilla training. We asked the guy, I said, does this mean we're going to Vietnam? He said, pretty much so. But I went over there and I went to the 90th Replacement Unit, which is kind of a bowl where they stick your names, and then whoever needs a replacement, they pull your name out and give it. I got sent to the 1st Aviation Brigade as a security guard at Tonsadute Air Base, which was good duty for 4 months. But the guy said if I can make it 4 months, well, then they'll transfer me to any operation I want to go to, or door gunner. So I chose to go as a door gunner. Security is awfully dangerous. You fall asleep, it's not good for you. So I went to the 336 Helicopter Company in Soc Trang, Vietnam, down in the Mekong Delta. Signed to 6 Slick, which carried the troops. I did a lot of local regional force, they call it. They're the ARVN's, Army of the South Vietnam. We'd fly them out to their place and drop them off, and then come back later to the day so to pick them up. We'd fly in ammunition and fly out wounded. It goes pretty good, but then I liked flying at night. And we had volunteered to fly at night. And, the position came up to where a light ship, we'd fly a light ship, and we'd fly over areas where the Viet Cong were supposed to be. And we'd shine our light on the tree lines, and some fool would shoot at us. We were targets. And then we had 2 gunships following behind us, and they'd come in and strafe and bomb the area. Then if it was a big hit, we'd call in artillery after we left. So I liked flying at night better. You could see the tracers. You could see them shooting at you. It's easier to aim, aim, shoot back when you see the tracers. But I enjoyed it. Sorry, I enjoyed it. Flying helicopters is one of the neatest things you can possibly do. I turned 23 when I was there. That was a long time ago. I'm bordering on 80 now. Really enjoyed the time there. I thought I was trained infantry, but I thought, no, I'm going marching through the jungle. But I got to ride. It was great. Came home without a scratch. But I saw a lot of things that I didn't want to see, but it was all right. It was war. Trouble is, when we got home, most of us were ignored. Couldn't talk about it because they wouldn't listen. So it took a while. It was clear into the 80s when other people started showing up, that like Desert Storm and that. Uh, that people started noticing. Says we treated those guys pretty bad, and so they started making a difference and started wearing Vietnam veteran hats, and not for them, but for other Vietnam veterans that see it, come over to shake your hand and welcome you home. That's one of the neatest things about being a veteran is the fellowship that you have with the other guys. It's great. Yeah, all the vets. Korea, World War II, Bosnia, Desert Storm, Iraq, freedom, welcome home.
All right, so my name is Smitty. I retired out of the Army as a staff sergeant in 2018. I was a civil affairs specialist in the Army. Civil affairs, they mitigate the effects of civilians on combat, and they mitigate the effects of combat on civilians. We're kind of like FEMA in a war zone. We take care of, so we're responsible for minimizing civilian casualties, minimizing damage to historical monuments. Anybody who's watched the movie The Monument Men, those were the predecessors or the early days of civil affairs. I went into the military. I went into the Navy in 1981. I spent 4 years active duty Navy. I was on the USS St. Louis, which was home ported in San Diego, and then moved to Sasebo, Japan. Spent about 6 or 8 weeks in Sasebo, and then I was transferred to the USS Denver, LPD 9. I did one Westpac with the USS Denver. So the interesting thing about being at sea, on the way over to Japan, we left out of Hawaii and we were headed towards Japan. We weren't really scheduled to stop in Japan. It was typhoon season, and we had 3 typhoons in the area close enough to be affecting the seas around us. So we were in 40-foot seas. The USS Denver is, if I remember correctly, 538 feet long and 85 feet abeam, and we were heavy. I mean, we were loaded with a Marine MEU unit, and we had all their equipment, most of their equipment down on our well deck. So we were loaded heavy, and when we would roll through from the trough to the rise, the ship couldn't come up fast enough, so we would take what they called green water over the bow, which means that you're not taking the frothy, foamy, wavy part. You're cutting right into the heart of the wave, and that green water would roll all the way back to the superstructure. So, sometime later, after we went to Mombasa, we were coming back from Mombasa, and we were coming through the Indian Ocean. I got off watch about 0600. I went out on deck to just look around and see what things were like, and I was amazed because the water was literally as flat and as smooth as glass. It was as smooth and calm as a still lake in the morning. I mean, it was just perfectly smooth, clean water for as far as the eye could see, and we could see to the horizon in all directions. And it was like that for 3 days. I mean, the only thing I ever saw in the water was the ship's footprint as it rolled through. It was amazing. So, got off active duty in '85. Went and did other things. Went back to Japan for a minute. In 2003, 2002 or 2002 it must have been. 2002, my wife and I, because of some decisions we'd made, we were a little bit behind the 8 ball as far as retirement was concerned. And I said, well, I'll go back into the Navy as a reservist, because the Iraq War was going on. But, Navy, that's a ground war. Navy didn't have anything to do with that, right? So in June of '02, I was in the Navy Reserve, and in November of '03, we were notified that we were getting deployed to Kuwait. Spent 6 months in Kuwait. Part of that tour, we got to go help Marines on the platforms up in the Northern Arabian Gulf. Got done with that tour, came home, and when I came home, I was talking to the career counselor, and he said, "You're gonna have a little bit of a problem retiring." I said, "Why's that?" So, well, you're hitting what they call retention control point, which means I wasn't promoting fast enough. And they were at that time they were making like they were making like 2 of the rank that I needed in order to promote. So I started looking for other options because I needed to ride this out to retirement. So a friend of mine was already in this civil affairs unit, and she was talking about the training and the stuff that she was doing, and I was like, well, that's pretty interesting. That I mean, helping people and stuff like that, that'd be kind of cool. So I went and I talked to her unit, and at that time the Army was taking anybody and everybody. So they were like, yeah, we'll take you. So I filled out a form and got released from 9 months of my Navy contract and signed up for the Army. So I signed up for the Army in, must have been November of 06. And started my second deployment in August of 08. We went to a place called Maysan in Iraq, Maysan province. We were there for 11 months. Worked with a lot of Iraqis, learned a lot about what the Iraqis thought about what us being there. It's not what everybody thinks. I had a lot of Iraqis when one of the things we do is we go out and we talk to civilians and ask them, like how are you doing? What do you think? All those kinds of questions. I never had an Iraqi tell me that he didn't like us there. I had a lot of Iraqis tell me that they were glad we were there and they were ready for us to leave, but none of the Iraqis that I talked to in the province that I was in was disappointed that we came. They were all glad to see Saddam gone, and they were all glad to have the opportunity to vote in an election where it actually meant something other than just go vote for Saddam. Came home from that tour. Spent a lot of time in training in schoolhouse units until 2018 when I retired.
Today's episode of Hometown Faces was brought to you by Shadow Spook, October 28th, family-friendly Halloween shadow show, 6 p.m. It's presented by the Silhouettes at the Frontier Events Center. Also, don't forget, 5 p.m., Dog Halloween Costume Contest, 6 p.m. is showtime. See you there.